Hi everybody, Whitney Magnuson here with 2 ways to use watercolors with your Unity stamps. And here's a peek at the cards I'll be creating today. So I'm using the exact same supplies, I'm just using the stamp in different ways to create a card set that is unique. So I chose 2 colors from my Gonzai Tambi watercolor set, so it's kind of a pink and a green. And I'm using this new stamp set, Delectable, and it's by Angie Blom. It's one of her border background stamps. And I already went ahead and pre-cut and scored some shortcut A2 card bases and die cut out some panels for my sentiments, as well as cut some Canson Watercolor XL paper since we will be watercoloring today. So for the first technique, I'm going to show you how to get kind of a vintage vibe with watercolors and your stamps. And so I'm just positioning my watercolor paper inside of my MISTI and then grabbing the stamp Delectable. And what's great about these border backgrounds is that the center is cut out, and so it's nice with a big background stamp like this. There's still room for that MISTI magnet, and I also love the open space. It's just something a little bit more unique. You can put a sentiment in there or whatever you are feeling at the moment. So I'm just adhering down my paper real well with some purple tape and just sticking my stamp on the inside of my MISTI. So now this is where the fun part happens. So here's the 2 colors that I chose, and I just have a little bottle of water here and a little paintbrush. And so I'm just going to grab some water and I'm kind of mixing the pink off to the side on my craft mat just to make sure that I'm getting the right pigmentation that I want and the right consistency for this technique. So now I'm just going to start by directly painting on my stamp. So I'm going to go ahead with this red and paint all of the florals on my stamp. And I'll just speed it up while I do this so you guys don't have to sit and watch me paint a stamp for a while. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to do the exact same thing with my green watercolor, and I'm just going to be coloring all the leaves here. And it's key to kind of get the right mixture of pigment and water. You don't want it to be so watery that when you stamp it down you can't make out what it is, but you want it to have enough water where, you know, it transfers the pigment on all of those areas that we want it. So it's kind of a fine line. So now this is where the magic happens. We get kind of a vintage vibe. So I'm just going to take my spray bottle and I'm just going to spritz my stamped image a couple of times here, and then I'm going to stamp it down. So you'll notice this first time when I pull up the stamp, it's not, the impression isn't what I wanted it to be. So I'm just working with it a little bit. And so I'm just going to repeat the process of stamping it down and drying in between layers. So I'm going to dry this layer really well. And the reason why I'm drying this layer is because I don't want the water on there to kind of distort the image. I want that layer to be dried completely before I repeat with the spritzing again and stamping down. So you can do this as many times as you would like until you're happy with it. Obviously, each time you do this technique, it's going to be different every single time. So that's kind of cool, I think. So here it is, the finished stamped image. It's just very vintage, distressed kind of look that I'm loving right now. So now for our traditional watercolor card, I'm just positioning a new piece of watercolor cardstock inside of my MISTI, just like we did before. And I'm going to be grabbing my VersaFine Clair Nocturne ink. I love this ink for sentiments and for watercoloring. This is a great ink for watercoloring and embossing. So what's great about this ink is that it dries pretty quickly. So maybe within about 20 seconds, which is unique for a pigment ink. but it can be embossed for up to 5 minutes. And so I really love it for stamping watercolor images like this, especially on watercolor paper with a little bit of texture. It just helps you to get that really dark impression, and it just looks perfect. So we're going to do the stamping of our sentiments while we're kind of waiting for that panel to dry completely. Even though it says it dries in about 20 seconds, I'm going to be adding water and smearing it around, and I don't want it to get ruined. So I'm using a sentiment from Difficult Roads, and this is a stamp set by Gracie L Designs. And I just really love her sentiments, just the mix of different fonts and how encouraging they are, so I reach for them a lot in my card making. So I'm just positioning that, and I'm going to be using the exact same ink, the VersaFine Clair Nocturne. Like I said, it is a favorite of mine for sentiments, just because it's so crisp. You will see what I mean in a second. There you go. So another reason why I love using this for sentiments when I'm doing multiple cards is that you can wait for up to 5 minutes to emboss it, and so I don't even need to like hurry right now to try to get the embossing powder on there. I can do it all at once, and it's all going to turn out just fine. So just repeating that process of stamping the sentiment with my VersaFine Clair. And there you have it. So I'm using my clear embossing powder, and this is Wow embossing powder. And I'm just covering up all of the stamped image here with the clear embossing powder, and I'll heat set it. And so here the sentiments are all heat set. You can see the text is kind of shiny and popping up. And now for watercoloring the stamped image here. So this is just going to be some really simple watercoloring. I'm just having fun with it. I'm not doing anything too intense with it. Just coloring in the florals with that pink and repeating the same process with the leaves. So I'm just going to speed up the video and let the music play. So right before I go in with the green, I'm just drying the pink completely, just so it doesn't kind of muddle together and create a color that I don't want. So I like to do that in between using different colors. It's just kind of a surefire way you know it's gonna work out. Alright, so now that we have both of our panels like ready to go, I'm going to add some gold splatters, and so I have a gold color that I pulled out from the same watercolor set, and I'm just going to add some water to my paintbrush and just tap it over each of these panels to create some gold splatters. I love adding splatters to cards, especially gold splatters. I think it's just kind of fun, so here we go. So there it is with the gold splatters all dried and ready to go. And I'm going to go ahead and die cut out these panels. And this is a wonky stitch die from Cottage Cuts. And I'm just going to run each of these through my Big Shot, and so we have some die cut panels. So I love adding black matting to my cards. I just think it really makes them pop, and so I'm going to do the same thing with this card. I'm going to adhere it to some black cardstock and just create a very thin matted border for this panel. So there they are. And now I'm going to be doing the same thing with my sentiments to kind of keep the theme together, just adhering them to the back of. My cats are going crazy, you guys, and this is literally the 9th time I've recorded this. I just need to keep going. I need to keep going. So it will stop. I'm just adhering the sentiments to the black matting of the cardstock here and creating just a kind of put together look. So now it's time for card assembly, and I am just assembling the panels on the front of my card bases. And I'm using a white organza ribbon here, and I'm tying just a simple knot off to one edge of the card here. I love white organza. It's just sheer, so pretty, and it kind of catches the sparkle and the color of what's around it. And so I'm just tying that into a simple knot, and then I will cut off the tails to where I want them to be, like so. And it's okay if it's not exactly like centered right when you tie it, because you can kind of slide it around. So there they are, they're both ready to go with the ribbons, and so now I'm going to adhere my sentiments. And I'm going to be using my 3D foam squares, and it's no secret, I love foam squares. So I'm just going to go ahead and adhere these to the center of my cards. And now, just for a finishing touch, I'm going to be grabbing my Ultra Bond adhesive and some of my Aurora Borealis confetti sequins and adhering them to my cards. So there you have it, 2 fun and fairly simple ways that you can use your watercolors with your Unity stamps. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, and thank you so much for hanging out with me today. Bye!